I want to answer the question in the title right away, because I know that's why you're here, and I respect that enough to not make you wait. The thing you should never do right after a divorce, the one thing that, more than anything else, will cost you everything the title promises it will cost you, is this. Make permanent decisions while your brain is running on emergency power. That's it. That is the answer. And I know that probably sounds simpler than you expected, maybe even a little underwhelming. So let me show you what I mean by it. Because once I walk you through what that state actually is, what it does to a man's judgment, and this is the part that is going to bother you, who is standing on the other side of it with a product in their hand and a smile on their face, you are going to understand why that one simple rule is worth more than anything else anyone will tell you in the first year after your marriage ends. So let's start with the state itself. Divorce after a long marriage is a specific kind of loss. And I want to be precise about that word, loss, because the culture around divorce, particularly for men, tends to move very quickly past it. The friends who mean well are already talking about freedom and fresh starts before the ink is dry. The dating apps are already suggesting you set up a profile. The financial advisor is already scheduling the asset review meeting. Everybody around a newly divorced man is already in the next chapter. And the man himself is usually still standing in the burning house. Because here's what actually ends when a 30-year marriage ends. It's not just the relationship. It's the entire architecture of a life. The house that carried the shared history. The social world that was built as a couple. The friends who came as a pair. The family routines that had two people at the center of them. The way Tuesday evenings worked. The way Sunday mornings felt. The shared language, the private references, the person who knew the story behind the scar on your left hand, and the reason you never order the fish, and the exact way you sound when something is really wrong versus when you're just tired. That person is gone. And everything that person anchored, all of it, is gone with them. Now, for a man at 30, that loss is devastating. For a man at 60 or 65 who has spent 25 or 30 years weaving that shared identity through every part of who he is, the loss is something else. It is closer to an amputation than a wound. And like an amputation, the man is often functional enough in the immediate aftermath that people around him mistake functional for okay. He is handling the paperwork. He is dividing the assets. He is showing up to things. He is eating, sleeping roughly, keeping his face arranged into something that resembles composure. But underneath all of that, his brain is doing something very specific. There is a documented neurological response to acute grief and major life disruption that almost never gets discussed in any of the conversations men have after divorce. The prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for long-term thinking, consequence assessment, deliberate decision-making, is measurably suppressed under conditions of acute emotional stress. The parts of the brain that handle immediate emotional response take over. The system prioritizes survival in the short term over planning in the long term. In practical terms, what this means is that a man who just went through a major divorce is literally less capable of evaluating long-term consequence than he was 6 months before it happened. His judgment is impaired in a specific, targeted, neurologically measurable way. And that impairment does not wear a sign. He does not feel impaired. He often feels unusually clear because the acute state creates a kind of tunnel focus that feels like clarity but is actually just narrowed vision. And here is the part that I want you to sit with, because it is the hinge of everything else we're going to talk about today. Every industry with something to sell to a divorced man knows that state exists. Some know it explicitly. Some just know it the way a good salesperson knows that a customer in emotional distress closes faster. But either way, the entire economy of the fresh start, which is one of the most profitable consumer categories in existence, is built around men in exactly that condition. You are at your most vulnerable, and the market is at its most ready. That combination is not an accident, and it is not neutral. So let's go through exactly what that looks like. Starting with money, the divorce itself forces certain financial decisions. The house has to be addressed. Joint accounts have to be separated. Assets have to be divided. Those decisions are mandatory and unavoidable, and most men navigate them, often imperfectly, often at some cost, because they have no choice. They are dealing with the fire because the fire is right in front of them. But here's what happens next. Those mandatory decisions create momentum. They create a sensation of motion. Things are being resolved. A new life is being constructed. And that sensation is genuinely relieving after months of stagnation and conflict. The motion feels like progress. And in that state, in that feeling of finally moving forward, men start making optional decisions as if they were mandatory ones. The house gets sold. A lump sum lands in an account. And a man who has just dismantled the last 30 years of his life, who needs to feel like something new is being built, who has a significant amount of money and a significant amount of emotional pressure to do something meaningful with it. That man is about to receive a phone call from every financial product in a 50-mile radius. The financial advisor who specializes in divorce transitions. Some of those advisors are extraordinary. Many of them have developed a very specific skill set around identifying how much urgency a newly divorced man is carrying and translating that urgency into a commission. The real estate agent who shows lifestyle properties to men in the reinvention phase, the downtown condo, the house near the water, the place that looks nothing like the house he shared for 30 years, because the point is distance from the past rather than suitability for the future. The car dealership. I don't even need to explain the car dealership. You already know what I mean. The data on financial decision-making after major life disruption is consistent, and it is sobering. Studies done across large populations on men who made significant financial moves in the first year following divorce, bereavement, or major job loss show the same pattern every time. The size of the decision and the speed of the decision move in the same direction during the acute phase. Bigger moves get made faster, and when those same men are surveyed 12 to 18 months later, after the acute state has passed and the prefrontal cortex has come back online, the moves made in the first acute year are the ones they most consistently, most painfully regret. Not the ones they deliberated over, the ones they made quickly because they felt certain. So let's keep going. Because money is the most visible cost. It's the one that shows up on a statement, the one you can quantify. But there's a cost running alongside it that most men don't account for until it's already compounded past the point of easy repair. The loneliness after a long marriage ends is its own specific condition. And for men over 60, men who, as we've talked about on this channel before, often have no deep male friendships capable of absorbing real weight, the loneliness lands in a body that has very few places to put it. The person who was the primary human connection for 25 or 30 years is gone. And the void that creates is not abstract or philosophical, it is physical. It sits in the house at 7 p.m. when the kitchen is quiet. It sits across the dinner table that used to seat two. It sits in the passenger seat of the car on a long drive. It is a presence made of absence, which sounds like a contradiction, but if you've lived it, you know exactly what I mean. And the cultural response to that void is immediate and completely unanimous. Get back out there. The apps are there, the friends are pushing. The well-meaning people in your life who watch you eat alone and feel uncomfortable, they want you partnered again. And they will tell you that wanting someone new is healthy, is resilient, is moving forward. And wanting someone new is real. I'm not dismissing it. Of course it's real. These men are alive. They have decades of life ahead of them. The desire for companionship is not a pathology. It is one of the most fundamental human needs there is. But there is a difference between a man who knows himself clearly and chooses a new relationship from that place, and a man who is carrying 30 years of unprocessed history into a new relationship because the alternative, sitting with the weight of all of it, is unbearable. The second man is in trouble. And he often doesn't know it because the new relationship provides such immediate, genuine relief that it temporarily feels like the answer rather than the avoidance. Here's what the research says on that, and I want to be direct because these numbers matter. Second marriages fail at higher rates than first marriages. Marriages entered within the first 2 years after a significant long-term divorce fail at substantially higher rates still. These are not opinions or observations from a therapist with a sample size of 12. These are documented outcomes studied across large populations, replicated consistently across decades of data. And when researchers ask the men in those failed second marriages to trace the sequence, when they actually sit with what happened, the pattern is almost identical every time. I wasn't ready. I moved too fast. I was so lonely, I mistook relief for love. I confused the feeling of having someone with the clarity of knowing who I was choosing and why. The new relationship was real. The person was real, the feeling was real, but the foundation underneath it was acute need rather than genuine knowing. And acute need as a foundation has a limited load-bearing capacity. It holds beautifully in the beginning when the relief is still fresh, and it starts to crack exactly when the relationship needs it to hold the most. And here's who knows all of this and doesn't tell you. The dating app doesn't tell you. The app is optimized for engagement, for the dopamine hit of a new match, the rush of possibility, the feeling that someone out there wants to meet you, which temporarily fills the void without addressing a single thing underneath it. The app profits from the void, not from its resolution. A man who is fully healed, who knows himself clearly, who is choosing a partner from a place of genuine wholeness. That man uses the app for a few months, finds someone, and leaves. He is not a long-term revenue source, a man in acute emotional need, cycling through matches, each one briefly filling the silence before the void reasserts itself. That man is the business model. So between the financial decisions and the rebound relationship, there is already significant exposure. But I told you at the beginning that I wanted to show you what sits underneath all of it. And this is the layer that almost never gets named directly. The one that, when I say it, I want you to really hear. When a marriage of 25 or 30 years ends, a man loses more than a relationship. He loses a version of himself. the husband, the partner, the man in that specific house, in that specific family, in that specific shape of a life. That identity was not something he wore on top of who he was. It was woven through who he was. Every daily decision, small ones, the coffee order, the parking spot, the Saturday morning routine, carried that identity inside it. Every plan for the future included it. Every assumption about what the next 10 years looked like was built on it. And when it ends, the question that surfaces, quietly at first, then louder, is one of the most disorienting questions a man can face at 65. Who am I now? And that question, in the acute state, produces a specific kind of panic. A 3 a.m. panic that doesn't announce itself as panic. It announces itself as urgency, as the pressing, undeniable sense that something needs to be done. That standing still is dangerous. That forward motion, any forward motion, is better than sitting in the not knowing. And the culture hands that panic a template. Reinvention, the fresh start. New look, new city, new lifestyle, new story. The bigger the transformation, the more it registers as resilience. The man who moved countries, changed careers, overhauled his wardrobe, found a yoga practice and a 32-year-old girlfriend. He's thriving. He's an inspiration. He became someone new. What the culture does not offer a template for is the slow, quiet, profoundly unglamorous work of figuring out who you actually are when you are no longer who you were. That work doesn't generate content. It doesn't photograph well. It doesn't sell anything. There's no product at the end of it, no transformation to document, no before and after that generates engagement. And so it gets skipped. And the man who skips it carries the unresolved identity question into every other decision he makes. Into the financial moves because a man who doesn't know who he is will buy an identity. Into the new relationship because a man who doesn't know who he is will borrow one from whoever loves him next. Into the new city, or the new look or the new story he is telling anyone who will listen. All of it haunted by the question he never stopped long enough to answer. And here's what compounds it further. The identity question doesn't stay quiet just because you stay busy. It follows, it is patient, and it resurfaces, usually at the worst possible moment. 6 months into the new relationship, or 3 months after the expensive move, or the first holiday season in the new place when it becomes very clear that the location changed and the man inside it did not. All right, so here's the rule. The one thing I want you to take away from everything I've just said: make no permanent decisions for at least 1 year. That is it. That is the whole prescription. 1 year, no permanent decisions. And I want to be specific about what I mean by permanent because this is important. I mean the decisions that are hard or impossible to reverse. Liquidating significant assets, selling the family home in a rush before you've had 12 months to understand what you actually want your life to look like. Committing to a new relationship at a level that creates entanglement before you know yourself in this new form. Relocating to a place you've always imagined rather than a place you've actually spent time in as a single man. Reinventing your identity around anything that costs money before the acute state has passed. Those decisions, hold them. Give them a year. Give your prefrontal cortex a year to come back fully online. Give the grief a year to do what grief does when you don't interrupt it, which is move. Give yourself a year to sit in the not knowing long enough that the knowing starts to come back. Here's what 1 year gives you. It gives you full options. Everything you want to do is still available at the 12-month mark. You can still move, you can still invest, you can still love someone new, you can still reinvent, but you do it from a standing position with a clear head, with the ability to evaluate long-term consequence that the acute state took from you. You do it as yourself. And here's the thing about men who hold that line. The men I've watched do this who resisted the urgency, who sat in the discomfort rather than purchasing their way out of it, who let the acute state run its course before making the big moves, almost universally, they arrive at the 1-year mark with more clarity about what they want, more financial stability, more honest understanding of who they are now, more capacity to choose something good rather than grab something available. The men who moved immediately, who let the fresh start economy guide them through the most vulnerable window they've ever experienced. Many of those men arrive at the 1-year mark with less money, more entanglements. A second relationship already showing the stress fractures that form when it was built on a foundation that wasn't ready to hold anything yet. And the identity question still unanswered, still following them into whatever they built. And none of this is your fault. I want to be clear about that, because fault implies you had all the information and made a bad choice. You didn't have all the information. The system that should have given it to you had a financial interest in withholding it. Every product on the other side of your acute state, the financial products, the lifestyle purchases, the apps, the reinvention industry, all of them are more profitable if you move fast. None of them benefit from you waiting, so none of them told you to. Well, now you know. You are a man who has survived something significant. The end of a long marriage is a seismic event, regardless of who wanted it or why. And the instinct to rebuild immediately, to replace what was lost as fast as possible, to show everyone, including yourself, that you are fine. That instinct is understandable and human, and I have enormous respect for the strength underneath it. But the strongest move available to you right now is not the fastest one. It is the most deliberate one. It is the choice to hold your ground for 12 months while the acute state passes, while the grief does its work, while the identity question gets answered by actual experience rather than purchased answers. You cannot buy your way out of this season, and you cannot outrun it. But you can outlast it. And men who outlast it come out the other side with something that no fresh start, no new city, no rebound relationship could have given them. They come out knowing exactly who they are. And a man who knows who he is, standing on solid ground with full financial options and clear eyes, that man can build something that actually holds. If you're in it right now, drop a comment. You don't have to give details. Just tell me where you are in the process, because I promise you there are men watching this in the exact same place. And knowing that is worth more than you think. We'll be back. Take care of yourselves.